It's been a year since I got married to Susan, time to say goodbye to this life.
Seriously, it's been forever. Give me a break already. I'm so done breathing the same air as Mrs. Susan. Haha.
The conversation between Kevin and Amy in the living room caught me off guard, and I involuntarily gasped. Their words were not something I could just ignore. Carefully, making sure not to alert them, I held my breath and recorded their conversation on my phone through the crack of the door leading to the living room. My company's truck is huge. Getting hit by that is an instant game over. Everything is set up, just need the hitman to do their part now.
You bad, Dad. But, well, it's not like there was ever any love from the start. As long as we can live comfortably, that's all that matters.
Their conversation was chilling, far from what you'd expect from a family. I felt goosebumps all over and fled the scene immediately. Staying in that house was out of the question. Shaking uncontrollably, I desperately thought about what to do next. My name is Susan. I'm 35 years old and work in public relations for a real estate company. I ended up in real estate because my father, a wealthy landlord, wanted me to inherit and manage his properties someday, hence he wished I'd accumulate knowledge for that. Thanks to my father's advice, I've acquired some land and apartments, earning a passive income from them. I got into PR on my boss's recommendation. I had been in sales throughout my 20s but got rotated to PR and learned the ropes there. Both sales and PR were fulfilling, and I dedicated myself to work, from early morning to late at night. The reason I started thinking about marriage was advice from my boss over drinks. Susan, you're perfect at your job. Now all you need is a kind husband. My boss, spurred on by alcohol, was cautioned by a colleague, that's a compliance violation, and he quieted down. But I wasn't upset. He was right, after all. I too desired marriage. But would it be an excuse to say I never had the chance to think about it? I'll find a wonderful husband, just you watch. I was quite drunk myself and responded enthusiastically, never imagining I'd meet my fiancé within a month. I met Kevin at the bar where I had discussed marriage with my boss. Just 3 days later, I found myself back in the same bar, a regular haunt for people from my office since it was close by. Actually, I like drinking alone. So there I was, on a Monday of all days, sipping beer solo, a strategic move to avoid bumping into other team members. Hey, are you here by yourself? Mind if I join? The man who approached me with a casual tone was sitting next to me at the counter. That's fine. Honestly, I was surprised. I've never been approached by a stranger before. It's probably because of my looks. Frankly, I'm not what you'd call cute, with single eyelids, a round face, and small facial features. Yet, for the first time at 35, being approached by a man in a bar was both shocking and pleasant. Most women might decline such an offer, but, powered by alcohol, I immediately agreed. Thanks. I'm Kevin. I work as a long-haul trucker. Nice to meet you. He extended his hand for a casual handshake. I found myself thinking, there really are some delightful men out there, as I returned his handshake. My name is Susan. I work at a real estate agency. Pleasure to meet you. I might have come off a bit stiff. But Kevin didn't seem bothered at all, starting to talk about himself without any hint of concern. He even delved into my personal life, completely dictating the pace of our conversation. I ended up revealing more than necessary, even mentioning that my father is a wealthy man. During our talk, I discovered we were the same age, which made me so happy that I ended up sharing things I usually never would on a first meeting. I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but I've never been in a relationship with a man. At first, Kevin was surprised by my admission, but then he casually suggested, then, why don't you date me? But... Come on, think of it as practice. Oh. Looking back, it was an odd situation, but at that moment, completely intoxicated, I found myself accepting and saying, well then, of course, yes. And just like that, our relationship began within a day of meeting. Surprisingly, my relationship with Kevin went smoothly, and about a month after meeting, he proposed to me. I was shocked, but overwhelmed by his reasoning that we're both 35, better to start early. I accepted his proposal without much thought. When I reported this to my boss, he was so surprised he almost collapsed, exclaiming, "What? Susan, you're getting married?" "Yes, but I'll continue to work properly."
Well, okay, congratulations.
I couldn't help but notice my boss seemed a bit downhearted. Nevertheless, with Kevin's marriage now recognized by those around us, the reality of our married life was fast approaching. 2 weeks after the proposal, we submitted our marriage registration. My parents were dismayed yet happy about our whirlwind marriage. Kevin, despite his casual and seemingly frivolous manner of speaking, was actually quite affable and approachable, quickly endearing himself to anyone he met. That's probably why my parents took a liking to his character. After the marriage, I moved into Kevin's home, a small apartment that felt cramped compared to the one I lived in alone.
"Come on in."
"Excuse me." I entered Kevin's home with a sense of trepidation, as if I was intruding. Then, from the back of the room, I heard footsteps that made me jump. At first, I thought he might have a large dog, but it turned out to be the voice of a young girl.
"Is this woman going to be my new mom?"
"Wow. Cut it out with that reaction, Amy," Kevin laughed. Amy, as he called her, appeared to be a middle or high schooler, but her hair was permed into tight curls, and she wore heavy makeup, giving her an old-school, flamboyant appearance. She glared at me sharply, as if I had taken her by surprise.
Sorry about that. But, you see..."
I had a feeling I knew what Amy wanted to say. It was clear she was disappointed to see a woman in her mid-30s, far from what she might have considered cute, entering her home. But more importantly, what was going on here? I looked at Kevin, seeking an explanation.
She's my daughter from a previous marriage.
She's 16 now.
I didn't mention it, but I was married once before when I was 18.
But that's beside the point, right? What matters is that I love you, Susan."
Married a stepchild. I had no idea.
The shock I felt at that moment was indescribable. It could be called a marriage scam, but having just married, I found myself facing this reality in utter confusion.
"Well, I'm going out with friends now," said Amy, leaving swiftly.
Left alone, I was lost in thought. "Susan, dinner's ready." But Kevin didn't give me a chance to think, and I ended up starting this distorted marriage life just as he dictated. Now, the fact that Kevin had a stepchild was completely unexpected, but after calming down, it didn't seem like such a bad thing. At the age of 35, I might not be able to have my own children, and since Amy is already in high school, I don't need to raise her. I tried to think positively as much as possible. However, there were other problems with our marriage. About 3 months after we got married, I suddenly started to worry about the lack of intimacy between Kevin and me at night. I realized we hadn't been intimate even once since we started dating. We were newlyweds, not a couple that had been married for years. I was honestly lonely that Kevin didn't seem to want me. Since his job was a long-haul truck driver, his time at home varied. But it wasn't like our days off never overlapped, and on days he worked in the morning, we would go to bed together at night as usual. Even if other couples have slightly different schedules, not being intimate at all made me wonder if it was because I wasn't attractive. After a lot of thought, I gathered the courage to subtly initiate things, only to be brushed off with a
"Sorry, I'm tired, maybe some other time."
Having no experience with men, I couldn't bring myself to demand more from Kevin and went to sleep with my feelings of frustration. Well, I could have endured if it was just the lack of intimacy. But other family problems were lurking. The problem was none other than Amy. As I mentioned at the beginning, Amy had a very flashy appearance and her friends were from a flashy crowd too. I was often called to school by Amy's teachers, who warned me about the poor behavior of Amy and her friends. The teachers showed some sympathy, knowing that I was a stepmother, but Amy seemed indifferent that I was being scolded in her place. I was shocked and thought, why do I have to go through this? One day, I had a bad feeling when Amy said she would bring friends home. When I came back from work on Friday night, there they were, Amy and 3 of her friends, sitting cross-legged in the living room, snacking on sweets and drinking juice. Of course, they were the flashy group she always hung out with. That would have been fine, but the floor was littered with snack debris, and stains from spilled juice had marred the carpet. The carpet was a recent purchase. It was a favorite of mine, picked out after much deliberation in the store, perfect for the start of our married life. This finally made me lose my cool, and I forced a smile as I said, "Good afternoon." My voice was tight with frustration as I let out a tirade. "If you spilled your snacks and juice, could you please clean it up? You're all part of the group that got scolded at school recently, aren't you? You should start changing your behavior, or you'll regret it when you're older." As a representative of the adults, I had to discipline these kids. With all the gentleness I could muster, I spoke to them. But none of Amy's friends seemed the least bit sorry. Instead, they looked at me curiously and whispered among themselves.
"This is the famous Mrs. Susan, huh? Ugh, didn't we meet her before? When we got called by the teacher?"
"Oh, right. I forgot, we've been called so many times I lost track. That's hilarious. And look at Mrs. Susan. She's old and not even pretty. Why did Amy's dad choose her?" Hearing their conversation was unbearable. Especially the words from the third girl hit me somewhat. I was aware I wasn't particularly attractive. But to be criticized by my stepdaughter's friends was too much. However, taking their words to heart and responding in anger wasn't the adult thing to do, so I stayed silent.
Can't say anything back, can you? You know it's true."
Even Amy mocked me, and I could no longer stand being there, so I decided to leave the house. All the while, Amy and her friends continued to laugh boisterously, their crude laughter echoing behind me. Why do I have to be driven out of my own home? Cursing this unfair fate, I wandered outside aimlessly until Amy's friends went home. This went on for about a year. I hadn't been intimate with Kevin even once since we got married. Amy still didn't accept me as her mother, always giving me a cold look. The calls from school increased, and the teachers, exasperated as if they had forgotten I was remarried, raised their voices saying, "We really need you to discipline at home properly." This had happened many times before, probably driving the teachers to their wits' end. Every time I was summoned because of Amy, I couldn't help but think, why must I suffer like this? But this was my daily life, until unexpectedly, my marriage came to an end in an unforeseen way. It happened one Wednesday evening. That day, I left the house after telling Amy, I might come back late because I have unfinished work from yesterday. Kevin was also going to be away from late afternoon to evening due to work. However, when I arrived at work, I was surprised to find, the pile of half-finished documents that should have been stacked on my desk had been neatly cleared away. Just then, my boss came over and said, "Susan, you seemed tired recently, so I finished them up for you yesterday."
"Thank you so much."
As I hastily expressed my gratitude, my boss smiled broadly and returned to his seat. Honestly, I had braced myself for another late night of overtime, so this kindness from my boss was incredibly appreciated. Thus, I managed to go home earlier than usual without having to do overtime and without other pending tasks. How nice, I can return early for once. Maybe I'll cook Kevin's favorite hamburger steak for dinner tonight. While thinking this, I arrived home and something made me wonder, Kevin's shoes, which shouldn't have been there since he was supposed to be at work, were in the entryway. Pondering whether he suddenly got a day off, as I was about to open the living room door, I heard Kevin and Amy's voices and paused, my hand frozen on the doorknob. "It's been a year since I got married to Susan. It's about time to say goodbye to this life."
"Finally, it's been so long. I'm really fed up. I just can't stand breathing the same air as Mrs. Susan, you know."
Hearing their conversation from the living room left me breathless. Say goodbye to this life. What does that mean? Their discussion was something I couldn't just ignore. I quietly held my breath, trying not to alert Kevin and Amy, and listened while recording their conversation through the crack of the door with my smartphone. My company's truck is huge. Getting hit by something like that would end it all instantly. Everything's been arranged, now it's just up to the hitman to do his job.
You bad, Dad. But then again, it's not like there was love from the start. As long as we can live a wealthy life, that's all that matters.
Moreover, she's such an idiot. Falling for a guy like me in a bar, and when I sweet-talked her a bit, she spilled everything.
I'm dying of laughter here. But hey, thanks to Mrs. Susan being such a fool, we found out she had a hefty fortune, right? Seriously, she's such an easy mark.
Amy's laughter, filled with words far beyond what a typical high schooler would say, was chilling. The conversation between the two was terrifyingly far from any family talk. Feeling my whole body break out in goosebumps, I fled from there as fast as I could. Staying in that house was out of the question. If their conversation was real, I would be attacked by the hitman Kevin arranged. Shaking uncontrollably, I desperately considered what I should do next. After leaving the house, I went to the town hall and got a divorce form. Luckily, it was just before closing time. I filled out the divorce form at a diner and then killed time at a cybercafe until late at night when I knew they would be asleep. Shaking the entire time, I spent the hours fraught with anxiety. As the night deepened, I finally returned home. Silently, I left the divorce form on the living room table. I will never return to this house again. With that resolution in my heart, I took only the essentials and went back to my parents' house. By the time I arrived, my parents were already asleep, so I quietly went to my room and fell asleep. The next morning, my parents noticed me and were naturally surprised. "Oh, you're back? What happened all of a sudden? What's with Kevin?" My father looked puzzled. "The thing is..." I played back the conversation I recorded last night between Kevin and Amy for my parents. As they listened, their expressions darkened quickly. After hearing everything, my father suggested in a low voice, "Let's go to the police." Yes, the police. Since this is a sophisticated criminal plan, it should be reported to the police. Honestly, I haven't been able to stay calm since yesterday, and I hadn't even thought of such an obvious action. I had only thought to use this recording if we had trouble during the divorce. "Okay, we're going to the police." Convinced by my father's words, I had been ready to go to the police. That's when it happened. My cell phone started ringing loudly. The sudden noise made me jump, sending a shiver through my body. Since I rarely receive calls outside of work, I was drawn to my phone and stared intently at the screen. Kevin. The caller was none other than Kevin. He must have woken up this morning and found the divorce papers on the table. It was immediately clear why he was calling. I exchanged glances with my parents, asking, "What should we do?" "There's no need to answer. You don't need to listen to anything that man has to say," my father said firmly, but the call ended and then started again. Kevin was persistent. The phone rang every minute, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, changing intervals. "We're getting nowhere like this. Perhaps it's better to talk once and agree on the divorce," I suggested, and finally, my parents nodded in agreement. To move towards a peaceful everyday life as soon as possible, I pressed the call button on my phone.
"Hey, Susan. Where are you right now?"
As expected, I heard Kevin's barking voice when I answered and instinctively moved the phone away from my ear. I turned on the speakerphone so my parents could hear and placed the phone down. "Where?" "I'm at work." I lied, doing my best to keep my voice steady.
"Huh? Work? Then what's this divorce paper about?"
"I came back late last night and left the divorce papers on the table. We didn't fight often, nor did I cheat. So why are we suddenly talking about divorce?" Kevin's irritation was evident in his every word. Indeed, we were not a couple who fought frequently, nor did either of us commit adultery. It's natural he would find it odd if I wanted a divorce without any apparent reason. But Kevin is the very person who conspired with Amy to take my life. He must know about the terrible treatment I've received from Amy. Yet, he has the audacity to say he doesn't understand the reason for our divorce. I looked at my parents. I could tell they were hinting at something with their expressions. They probably wanted me to expose what was recorded on the voice recorder. I had intended to run to the police without saying anything, but under such circumstances, there was no helping it. It was time to let him know that I knew everything. Trying to control my racing heart, I decided to tell Kevin about what had happened since yesterday evening. Since you seem to be misunderstanding, let me enlighten you. I know what you two are trying to do. Huh? What are you talking about? Kevin played dumb, but his voice shook slightly. If things continue this way, I might be able to get a confession. I felt like a detective interrogating a suspect as I continued to speak. Earlier, I said I came back late last night, but that was a lie. I finished work early for a change and got home around 5:30 p.m. You can imagine my surprise when I saw Kevin's shoes at the entrance, though you were supposed to be at work since the afternoon. But that wasn't really the case, was it? I pressed on with the persistence of a predator cornering its prey, confirming each fact one by one. So what? Wait, I didn't know you came home early yesterday. Why would you lie about that? Kevin's voice grew increasingly panicked over the phone. While I kept a triumphant feeling to myself, I crafted my words carefully. I thought by now you'd understand, but if you really can't picture it, I'll spell it out for you. Yesterday evening, I overheard you and Amy plotting to take me down and steal my inheritance. Huh? The atmosphere froze as if Kevin's breath had stopped. He would never have dreamed that I had overheard his and Amy's conversation from the day before. But the reality was that I had indeed heard everything.
Ha. What are you talking about? That's impossible, Susan. You must be misunderstanding something. Yes, I did talk with Amy in the living room yesterday evening because I had no work, but we were just discussing her school. Susan, you must be tired lately. There's no way I'd plot to take your life, especially when I love you this much.
Kevin seemed to decide to feign ignorance, blatantly lying to win me over. But of course, I would not fall for that. I don't want to hear an insincere "I love you." It seems you don't believe me. So, I'll send you the recording via message right now. I made sure to record your conversation from yesterday.
What?
Kevin was clearly not expecting this, as I could hear his surprised voice over the phone. I immediately sent the infamous recording to Kevin. There was silence from him for a while, as if he was listening to the recording. But from time to time, I could hear him muttering, "Damn," or "Why," which made me smirk, knowing I had finally confronted him with the evidence. See? Now you understand, right? That's the proof. I'm thinking of going to the police now. This is a serious criminal plan. My husband is plotting to kill me, I'll tell them, so be prepared. I spoke calmly to Kevin after he finished listening to the audio data.
Wait a minute. Police? What are you thinking? Even if this data is real, I haven't actually done anything yet. Look, let's start over. I won't think of such things anymore. I'll talk to Amy too. She has been treating you badly all this time. That's your complaint, right? I'll make her live on her own or whatever. But I don't have the money for her to live alone. Damn. I had planned to say goodbye to this poverty by taking your inheritance.
Kevin seemed to admit his guilt, but it appeared he had no intention of apologizing to me. If there was real love, he would have prioritized and acted with my best interests at heart. I could no longer see a future of happy marital life with Kevin, who only thought about money. I had completely written him off. Staring into my parents' eyes, I took a deep breath. Kevin, what do you think you're doing? Tricking me and then suggesting we start over when things don't go your way. How rotten can you get? And I'm aware Amy is there next to you, right? Skipping school and concocting plans like this, I can't forgive her either. Yes, I had noticed the breathing of someone other than Kevin on the other side of the phone, presumably Amy's.
What do you mean by now?
Sure enough, Amy's voice came through the phone, causing my parents to gasp. I understand you can't accept me as your mother. But I can't condone you speaking badly of me to your friends or participating in your father's criminal plans. I intend to report you to the police as well. Be prepared.
Huh? Why should I be taken to the police? It's Dad's poverty that's the problem, not mine. What? What did you say?
As the two began to argue, I sighed in exasperation.
Enough with the noise. Both of you are going to the police. Plus, my parents are here too, so there are plenty of witnesses. Now, all that's left is to fill out and submit the divorce papers.
I said this with more firmness than usual, and Kevin tried to argue.
Hey!
Wait a minute.
If you're going to the police, at least apologize here first. That's right, that's right. You've messed up our future plans.
Kevin and Amy said something that made my ears doubt.
I couldn't help but let out an exasperated. What?
It seems these two were incredibly foolish. Finally, my deep-seated anger erupted.
Why should I apologize to you two? You're the ones who should be apologizing. Don't ever contact me again. Goodbye.
Without waiting for a response from Kevin and Amy, I hung up the phone this time by my own decision.
That was the right thing to do.
Yeah, you did well.
I can't believe Kevin turned out to be such a terrible person.
Anyway, I'm glad Susan is safe. My parents let out sighs of relief. None of us could have imagined that the marriage would break down in just a year. But certainly, living with someone who plotted against my life would never lead to happiness. It was a sad outcome, but better than the worst-case scenario. Now, I choose to think that way. It seems Kevin filed for divorce on the same day, sending me a message saying, "We're divorced." The morning call must have been tough for him. Of course, I made him pay through the lawyer.
Later, he sent a desperate message, "Since we're divorced, can you just forget about the police matter, please?" But I ignored all of it and delivered the recording to the police the next day.
Kevin and Amy were arrested quickly for planning the crime, and I suppose they're being interrogated by the police now. Kevin had mentioned using his company's truck in his plot against me, but that got out, and it appears he had also discussed the nefarious plan over the phone at work, which was overheard and reported by a coworker. I was appalled by Kevin's reckless actions, but it was clear that wrongdoings would inevitably be punished, which gave me a sense of closure. Kevin was, of course, fired from his job. He intended to steal my inheritance and live a wealthy life, but now, he's forced into an even poorer existence than before, having lost his job and being sued for alimony by me. If he hadn't been so greedy, he could have led a peaceful life. What a fool. I hope he enjoys his infernal new life. As for Amy, she was already known for her poor conduct at school, and with this incident, she was expelled. I believe it was the right action to take. Though it's pitiable that Amy has no mother, she's a high school student capable of discerning right from wrong. Hopefully, this has been a valuable lesson for her, teaching her that bad actions will always be punished. I hope she reflects deeply while in police custody. As for me, I'll be staying with my parents for a while. When I told my boss about the divorce after just a year, he said, "Seriously? Maybe it was because I pushed you into the marriage. My bad." But maybe this means I have a chance now, with a smug look, which surprised me. But at the same time, I was touched to know he thought of me in that way, which made my heart flutter. I had thought I would stay single for a while, but knowing my boss for a long time, and recognizing his kind and considerate nature, I felt maybe it's okay to slowly start thinking about the future with him, so I accepted his invitation for the weekend. The future is unknown, but it's precisely because it's unknown that it holds excitement. I'm grateful to my boss for reminding me of that.